Well, hi. Thanks for talking to me. I
Hi.
appreciate it. I
Pleasure.
really enjoyed this series. I actually hadn't seen it before. I watched both seasons in the last couple
Oh,
of days,
wow.
and I really, really liked it. So
Oh, great.
I'm
Oh,
excited
awesome.
excited to talk about it. So obviously the main storyline in season two is the pregnancy. So can you sort of talk about, I guess, how that I mean, obviously there's a lot of fears involved in that and everything of what could go wrong in that. So you can just sort of tease about, I guess, that
Hmm.
issue and how it's affecting them.
Yeah, well, look, one of the things with both seasons of this show that was really important to me was finding a way, an avenue that the audience could see their own life or versions of their life reflected through what these characters are going through. Season one, the character of Mary being a werewolf was a metaphor for a bunch of
Yeah.
things. You know, the baggage that we carry, the fear of hurting someone or hurting yourself, and obviously that was heightened by it being a werewolf. So season two, the pregnancy and wanting to know what they were having, was it going to be a baby or was it going to be a wolf? It seemed like a great way of being able to continue a similar metaphor. I've got a 12-year-old son. You know, I remember the going through the pregnancy, and look, he was actually premature by 5 weeks as well too, and just the fear and the shock of going through that, and then managing his health after that as well too. It seemed like uh, the characters and Mary physically carrying this child or this wolf with her the whole time was a constant reminder of like, what is this going to be? How am I going to mother this, if it's a baby or if it's a wolf? And then also Mary having a baby forced her to go out into the world. This is something that, unlike in season one, where she could kind of keep herself contained, could limit the amount of people she interacted with, this thing growing inside of her immediately exposes her to a whole bunch of situations and interactions that she's never had to deal with before. So it was a great way of bringing in so much conflict and so many dramatic and comedic interactions that just let the story kind of evolve and go to where it goes to.
Right. I wanted to ask you though, you talk about the comedic in that. Can you talk sort of about balancing that tone? Because obviously this has a lot of seriousness, but it is also funny. I mean, I found myself laughing and crying throughout the course
Right,
of the season
right.
at different times. So can you talk
That's
about
right.
balancing that?
Yeah, well, look, and season two, there's a lot more comedy in it than season one, and that was I. When I'm working on something, I just kind of let the story unfold and tell me what it needs to
Mhm.
be and where it needs to go. And I didn't predict that there would be as much comedy in season two as there is, and that was just by virtue of the fact that it's such a ridiculous thing. You know, the whole concept of the show is so ridiculous that once you start sort of taking that out into reality, it and I think by balancing the tone, the more straight that you play the ridiculousness,
Mhm.
it becomes funnier, but
Yeah.
in a weird way, it becomes more moving as well too, because it's, for me, this show wouldn't have worked if it was just a straight relationship drama. I needed the comedy to be a release for the characters, but also for the audience, you know, in terms of how they're viewing this show. And then there's obviously the horror as well, which comes in and disrupts everything the way it does throughout. So for me, it was actually just about, look, life is ridiculous as well too. So the situations that the characters find themselves in this season just heighten absolutely everything.
Right. Now, I wanted to talk to you. You mentioned the horror, and then I wanted to talk about I believe it was the very opening. Since I've watched them all together, it's hard to remember. But the dream sequence. Can you talk a bit about filming that? Because obviously that was more towards the horror, but yet it was also funny at the same time with all the blood and everything.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and actually that came from an idea of Isla's, interestingly, which we sort of took and ran with. But I wanted to misdirect the audience into feeling like, oh, this is where we want to see the characters. This is
Yeah.
like this makes sense. And then having just the most horrific thing happen by that puppet sort of appearing. For me, it's like, I mean, it's hilarious because of the way everyone
Yeah.
plays it in that scene, but it's also Mary's worst fear of what could
Yeah.
actually happen as
Yeah.
well too. But in a weird way, our prosthetic design team, Odd Studio, made the best puppet they brought. I mean, that's all prosthetics, like that whole sequence, and it's such a it's it's kind of cute. Like I find it in a weird way. I find it kind of cute, but it's also we get to see a baby at the beginning of the show.
Mhm.
We get to see a baby at the beginning of episode one, and then we get to see a different baby at the very end of the show as well too. So it was an important progression of understanding what is actually growing inside of Mary, and maybe it's not the thing that she fears it will be.
All right. Can you tease a bit about Anton and how that's going to affect just their relationship for that matter?
Well, yeah, look, Anton was coming up with that character was the thing that made me want to do season two. It seemed like a really interesting way of bringing in a disruptive character the way Anton is, and Edgar Ramirez played him better than I'd imagined when I was writing that character as well too, because he's an antagonist, but he is an antagonist that hopefully you understand his point of view, and his point of view should be disruptive because we should see what he may be meant to Mary, but what he could potentially mean to Mary if they were to continue their
Yeah.
relationship as well too. But also Edgar played it with such a beautiful, multifaceted way. He played it's believable. It's hilarious the way he plays it too, because he plays it so straight, but his comic timing is amazing because he doesn't ever play any of the comedy for laughs. He
Right.
just plays it truthfully. And he's obviously a real threat to Gary, not only because of what he potentially means or meant to Mary, but also every other character in the show falls in love with Anton as a character as well, too, which is also what happened with all of us. We all just kind of fell in love with Edgar and didn't want him to leave as well. So, yeah, it's much more interesting when you can understand the point of view of the antagonist, and hopefully that's what Anton brings to the show.
Now, the other kind of thing, and obviously we don't want to go too far into spoilers, but I did want to kind of talk about is that you did kind of bring back around what happens in the season finale.
Oh
So
yeah,
can you tease a bit about sort of how that's going to still be a part of the show and it wasn't just dropped, which I appreciated.
yeah. That, to be honest, was something that came in very late in pre-production, and I'd written the last two episodes. They were completely different. Well, there was still the sort of tension of what happens in the
Mhm.
hospital, but there wasn't that added element that you're talking about. And it was something that when it appeared, or when the thought came to me, was like, oh wow, this actually needs to happen. We need to address this, and not only do we need to address it, by bringing it back in, it brings a whole lot of really great tension and conflict, which adds to the final episode. The thing that I wasn't planning on was the ending to end quite the way it does. I really did have to sit down and go, are we going to end this season like this? Because it's not as open ended as well. I mean, season one, you can it could have ended there, and you could imagine what
Or
happens to the
could have kept
character.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would have been very satisfying to have season one end the way it does. I'm not sure if season two is going to be as satisfying for the audience, but unfortunately, it just was what the story told me it needed to be. So we'll see what happens from this point on. But I know if I was watching this show, and I love this show because it means a lot to me, and the characters mean a lot to me. And it's exactly the type of show that I would love to watch. I think if I got to the end of this season and had that ending, I don't know how I would feel. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to continue with the characters.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
do you have obviously you can't tell me, but do you have an
Yeah.
idea where it's going?
Yeah, look, I always envisioned this series and these characters as a three
Oh,
season
okay.
story.
Interesting.
Like there's the characters meeting and cohabitating in season one was one version of it. How do you bring someone into your life and bring someone into your child's life? Season two was always about how do you have a child when with this particular situation. There is a whole there is a whole other thing that I know I want to deal with. It's just a question of whether I'll be able to or not.
Okay. No, that's good. I just wonder because I know you said how you sort of just write it and it goes. I know when I try to write something, if I do that, it never gets an ending. So that's
Oh
why
yeah,
I
right.
was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
curious if you
Yeah, no, I've always got. It was interesting when I came up with the idea for the show and wrote season one. I did always have. There is a way I can foresee ending this and actually walking away. That's certainly not what happens in season two.
well, I hope you get a season three. I want to see more and know what happens. I really enjoyed it, and I just want to say I know we're out of time, but I just want to say I really like the imagery of the stained glass, even in the actual
Oh,
house too.
yeah,
I
great.
thought that was really pretty. I really like that. So
Oh, that's really lovely to hear because you're the first person that's pointed that out to me because that was a really great discovery. We when we were location scouting, we found this house that had this amazing stained glass windows and we just ran with it. That's why all the opening titles have all that
oh, so
stained
that
glass.
came after the fact. Okay, well, that's
Yeah,
interesting to know
yeah.
it came after. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I hopefully we'll get to see
Pleasure.
more. Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Lovely to
lot.
see
Have a good
you.
day.
You too.
Bye bye.